One family.
Oh my God.
Possible 45.
Two horrible tragedies. That's pretty dark stuff. At sea and on land.
My father, he is in bed and someone shot him in the head.
Do you remember what you noticed?
First thing I thought is this crime scene is staged.
Linda always felt that she deserved more than what she was getting, because she and my dad were always butting heads.
We've got no weapons, we've got no enemies that we know of.
And no more details, because she disappears.
I told her not to go on that boat.
So she went out of the way to give them information in case something happened.
Yes, indeed.
It's just getting wilder and wilder because in the middle of the ocean, nobody can hear you scream.
Every fisherman has a story about the one that got away. And this is Nathan Carmen's. The 22-year-old was set to meet up with his mom, Linda, for a late-night fishing trip out here off the coast of Rhode Island. But for Linda, the trip was less about catching bass and more about bonding with her son.
Fishing was one of the things that brought them together, and that was Linda really giving herself to the experience because Linda hated fishing. Linda didn't eat fish, but she thought this is the only thing that made Nathan happy, and she wanted to connect with her son in any way possible.
That was a common occurrence. They used to go either weekly or sometimes bi-weekly.
Nathan and his mother, they'd taken a boating course. They had some fundamental knowledge, but they stuck pretty close to land and were fishing for stripers and blues.
Nathan's experience was, I would characterize him as a recreational fisherman.
Mom and son planned to cruise toward Block Island in this boat which Nathan recently bought, one that just passed inspection by the Coast Guard a month earlier. That's comforting to Linda, who has a better to be safe than sorry approach when it comes to boating.
So she begins to tell her friends about this fishing trip and shares information as to where they're going to be at specific times during that trip.
Linda is so cautious, she even texts photos of the boat and its registration number to her friends so it could be easily spotted if the boat breaks down.
You're relying on your engine, you're relying on electronics to get you there.
On a starless night with calm seas, the two depart Ram Point Marina in Rhode Island at about 11 p.m. Linda texts her friends that the journey is underway. The boat is never seen or heard from again.
One of my sisters had called me and said Linda and Nathan are missing. And I kind of freaked out.
Linda's friends begin to worry on Sunday of that weekend because Linda had claimed that she was going to come back and text them when she arrived.
Linda always did a float log. And, you know, when Linda got back, she'd call her friend Sharon, and Sharon never received the phone call.
That's when two of her best friends reach out to authorities and say, something has happened. There are two missing boaters off the coast of Rhode Island. We need your help.
It started out as a typical missing persons investigation, which is not criminal in nature. Our first order of business is naturally to find the missing people, gather the facts and circumstances to try to determine how they potentially went missing. Oftentimes people are not missing, they're just overdue.
The U.S. Coast Guard quickly begins a search over the Atlantic.
The United States Coast Guard really deployed every available resource that they had to find this missing boat. They deployed fixed-wing aircraft, reconnaissance planes, Coast Guard cutters.
Given the nature of the success rate that the Coast Guard has with search and rescue, I was very, very shocked that they were not finding anything.
We defer to the Coast Guard for search and rescue efforts in that respect. They were really scouring the ocean, and the search efforts came up unsuccessful.
I think it was day 6 that the Coast Guard made a decision to call off any additional search. And at that point, they had covered 64,000 square nautical miles, which is a massive, massive search area.
So the Orient Lucky, which is a Chinese cargo ship, they were out around 115 miles south of Martha's Vineyard as they were shifting ballast in their ship.
The Orient Lucky routinely travels the high seas picking up cargo, but this time it will make headlines for picking up something else. Lucky indeed.
They saw what they believed was an orange ball popping out of the ocean about 1 square nautical mile from where the cargo ship was positioned at the time. And when they got a little closer, they realized it was a life raft. And inside that life raft was a figure, a young man standing and waving a flag in distress. Getting this large freighter close enough to not kill Nathan Carman, but save Nathan Carman was a challenge. And I think the captain made a certain maneuver that allowed them to get a little closer to Nathan where they could deploy a life ring, and the life ring landed several feet away from where the life raft was. So Nathan then had to jump out of the life raft and swim.
The stunned crew members document the rescue with a series of photos and videos. Once he's on board, Nathan is offered hot soup, water, and dry clothes.
I got a call from my supervisor saying that Nathan had been recovered by a passing ship. I was shocked, and I was thankful that there was a survivor.
The rescue, a kind of needle in a haystack, becomes international news.
And a man lost at sea with his mother for 8 days has been found alive in good condition.
There were pictures of Nathan that were on the front page of newspapers all over the world because everybody thought that this was a wild story.
Next tonight here, the family mystery at sea. More than 100 miles from land, the discovery, and authorities asking what happened.
Nathan, this is United States Coast Guard, Boston. Over.
Mom and I, 2 people, myself and my mom, were fishing, and there was a funny noise in the engine compartment. I looked and saw a lot of water. The boat dropped out from under my feet. When I saw the life raft, I did not see my mom. Have you found her?
No, we haven't been able to find her yet.
Nathan Carman is still on that freighter. He's expected to arrive in Boston tomorrow night.
So now we can start to maybe get some insight as to what transpired and why it transpired. But it was also concerning because Linda hadn't been recovered.
Happy to be back on land, but exhausted by his ordeal, Nathan heads home and asks for privacy.
I would just like to thank the public for their prayers and for their concern for both my mother and for myself.
It's not the first time this family has dealt with drama and tragedy.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
This is a nautical map. The area that Nathan departed from is right up here. His transit would have taken him down this body of water here. That is the point in which one of the individuals traveling inbound observed Nathan and Linda on the boat. And that was the last time that anyone saw the boat.
In the days and weeks after his dramatic sea rescue, Nathan finds himself just as alone on land as he was at sea. And he feels like the media has gotten his story wrong, so he agrees to an interview with ABC News.
Well, it would be great to have people embracing you, saying, we're glad you're home, we're glad you're alive. It hasn't been that.
Loneliness seems to be Nathan's constant companion. He grew up an only child. His parents divorced when he was little. Kids made fun of him at school.
I heard people trying to imitate him or, try to make fun of the way he spoke. And I've definitely seen people mock the way he ran down the hallway.
I got the impression that a lot of people didn't try to talk to him, and maybe that kind of contributed to his loneliness or feeling isolated and uncomfortable being in crowds and with other people.
His best friend in the world was one who wouldn't judge him, a horse named Cruz.
Yes, I was very fortunate in that regard, and I was able to really form a strong bond emotionally.
Cruz and Nathan had a very tight bond. It was definitely his best friend, his confidant. I went to the stable once with Linda and Nathan. We were ready to leave the stable. I said, well, where's Nathan? Go on in and get Nathan. She's like, no, Nathan loves to spend time with Cruz alone before we leave. And he was there for probably a good half hour, if not longer, just spending time with Cruz in his stall.
But when Nathan is 17, that bond shatters. Cruz dies. Devastated, Nathan runs away from his Connecticut home. Nathan doesn't stop running until he reaches Virginia, 600 miles away. That's where a sheriff's deputy finds him.
Running away from home was something that I felt that I had to do at the time. I don't fully understand or comprehend that sitting here now.
A couple of interesting things Nathan had on him on his possession when he was found in Virginia. He had $4,000 in cash. That money had been given to him by his grandfather, but he also had a couple of photos of his horse, Cruz. And he had a Ziploc bag with some of the horse's hair in it.
His parents drive all night to Virginia to bring Nathan home.
Clark Carmen told me that Nathan had fled to a horse farm, or that's where he was supposed to be going, in Florida, because Nathan had told his father that that was a place that he could feel normal.
Nathan is diagnosed with Asperger's, which we now know as autism spectrum disorder. Social interactions and communication skills can be challenging.
I'm not someone who understands relationships or who's good about talking about emotions.
But Nathan does share a close relationship with his grandfather, John Chocolos, a wealthy real estate developer who made his fortune in the nursing home business.
My dad had 5 sisters and 4 daughters, and then he had his first grandchild. That I think Linda was really excited that she had a boy to bring into my dad's life.
And then Nathan comes along, and he's your uncle's first grandchild. He doted on him.
Right.
How excited was he to have a grandson?
I mean, there's not really even words for it. He had such great hopes for that kid.
Tell me about the daughters in the family.
I think they were all different individuals. Elaine was the oldest. The next one down was Linda. She was more like John, personality-wise. Charlene is the next one down. Valerie's the youngest. I think she was kind of like the apple of John's eye.
My grandfather was the closest person to me. He was like a father to me, and I know I was like a son to him.
When it comes to business, Nathan, a teenager, has a pretty unusual role at his grandfather's company, one that requires him to look and listen closely.
John Chocolos brought Nathan to all of his business dealings because John Chocolos was hard of hearing, and Nathan was his both eyes and ears at every business meeting. They would consult each other after the business meetings were completed. So I think that, you know, John Chocolos was grooming Nathan to take over the family business.
I got the feeling that John had a very good relationship with him and was trying to cultivate that. Nathan was as introverted as John was extroverted, I think.
What was his relationship like as Nathan is growing up? You said there weren't enough words.
He kind of treated him the same way that he treated me when I was a kid. You know, I mean, he couldn't do enough for him. The only problem with it is that John always looked at a problem. If there's a problem, if you throw enough money at it, it's going to solve it.
John Chocolos doted on Nathan, gave him anything he wanted, whether it was a credit card or a new truck or a new apartment. There was nothing that Nathan needed because John was always there with his checkbook or his credit card to give Nathan anything he wanted.
With a support system like his granddad, Nathan's future could be limitless until one phone call changes everything.
Oh my God! Oh my God! The front door was locked! Oh my God!
Possible 45.
Oh my God! I don't even know what to do! I don't even know where to look!
Windsor, Connecticut, a typical small town. Pretty nice community. You know, not a lot of crime. Murders in Windsor are very rare.
Not rare enough for the man living on Overlook Drive. John Chocolos was a self-made man here in Windsor, Connecticut, running his multi-million-dollar real estate business out of his modest home. That is until the morning of December 20th, 2013. Police arrive here after getting an urgent 911 call.
Okay, what's the emergency?
I came to check on my father to pick him up for an activity. He is in bed and someone shot him in the head.
Is he still alive?
I don't think so. I walked into the bedroom and there's blood all over the back wall.
When I saw the news and my dad being brought out, you know, in a body bag and them saying it was a murder, and I lost it. I lost it. I fell to the floor and I'm crying hysterically.
My name is Scott McGregor. In 2013, I was a detective for the Windsor Police Department. Mr. Chocolos was found in a bedroom on the upper part of the house. In his bed, we found him that he had been shot 3 times.
The scene says a lot to the detective, not for what's in the house, but for what isn't.
You obviously start looking for evidence, and when you can't find spent shell casings, once again, you go back to whoever did this, you know, took the time to retrieve those casings and not leave evidence behind. That kind of tells us that the person planned this out knew to cover their steps, which ultimately makes our investigation harder.
Sergeant Chris McKee also gets the call to head to Overlook Drive, a quiet street with a quiet resident who wasn't exactly well known around town. How did he fit into the community in terms of how he had accumulated his wealth? Was he kind of like a little local success story?
I gotta say, he ran in his circles and his business circles. He wasn't known in Windsor, you know, and I was very active in community roles in the department, and like I said, I wasn't aware of him until this investigation.
McKee walks into a bloody scene. You're looking around the room. Do you remember what you noticed?
A little further down from Mr. Chocolos' bedroom, there was a glass door, or a door with glass panes that led into the backyard. The officer and I observed that there was broken glass.
A break-in?
Well, it looked like it was meant to be a break-in, but looking at it, it was very clear that the glass had been punched from the wrong side, and it was very suspicious. First thing I thought is this crime scene is staged.
The recently widowed victim was known to keep cash in his house, but after the shots were fired, the gunman left. The money still there. Was there any sense that it had been ransacked or robbed?
There had been large sums of money in the house and other valuables, and honestly, nothing appeared touched. It told me that this was personal.
The devastated family speaks out on local news, hoping to catch a killer.
My father, while he lived a small life, he was a very large man. And to know him, you could never forget him.
Anyone could have done this.
This person killed at least once that we know of. This person's gotten away with murder. And chances are it will happen again.
When we start any murder investigation, we want to do a timeline. We want to start trying to find out who was with John.
My father, my mother passed November 21st. my father for 2 weeks was staying with one of us, or Linda was staying at my father's house.
Another curious thing about the home, it doesn't exactly look like a millionaire lives there. One of the victim's daughters explains why.
My father has an elaborate estate. I mean, the man's worth at least $40 to $50 million. I mean, it's huge. You wouldn't know it going into the house. That's the only reason why I'm bringing up my father's financial worth. Is because looking at this house, you would not know that he has a 25,000 square foot house up in New Hampshire.
You find out that this is a prominent businessman, a wealthy businessman.
Yep.
What does that say to you initially about this?
Kind of starts to focus investigators in on, was this financially motivated? Did someone have, this gentleman had a lot of money, a lot of properties, did someone have something to gain financially from his death?
The videos of the Windsor police interviewing various family members have never been broadcast before.
Nathan and I went fishing. We went out of Point Judith, Rhode Island. Okay. So we went on a cod trip that left at 6 in the morning, got back into port at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
A long day.
We learned that John, the day before, the last person to see him was his grandson, Nathan Carmen. We learned that through talking to Nathan, talking to family.
Hey Nathan, what's your last name? My last name is spelled C-A-R-M-A-N.
We have to treat everyone as a possible suspect. Family, associates, people who worked in the office, neighbors, anything, anyone could have done this.
Investigators asked Nathan about employees at Chocolos's company, and the grandson mentions one who, he says, complains about being overworked and underpaid.
Just that I'm underpaid, also the stress load. I have 101 things to do. I have to get all these papers in. Now you're asking me to do this and the other thing. So he would bitch and moan about that.
The bookkeeper is, in fact, stealing from the Chocolos's company.
So obviously he's someone we want to talk to.
Nathan begins outlining his final evening with his grandfather to investigators. It begins with dinner. He was going to come here and eat that night with Nathan.
That was the plan, and he wanted me to come too. Yeah. And, I said, look, you guys go do it. If I only knew what I knew, now.
After their meal, Nathan and his grandfather return to the Windsor home. At some point, John Chocolos gets a phone call and puts it on speaker.
I think that there's a real possibility that the person who called him may have been a mistress. I don't like saying that my grandfather was doing that, but I think there's that real possibility.
It wasn't one of your aunts?
No, it was not one of my aunts. It was not one of my aunts, no one in the family. Very young, 20, 30. And he then told that female voice to just wait. Hold on a second. He showed me to the door.
Nathan Carmen is correct. There is a young woman Chocolos has been talking to.
And she became a suspect. Did you go anywhere else that night or anything like that? Or did you just stay home?
No, I didn't sleep because I was where I had to be at. I was supposed to be at the meet my mom at 3 o'clock. When I fall asleep, I have difficulty waking up. So I tried to stay awake. I did run out to Stop and Shop, and I got some ice cream for myself. I picked up a few AAA batteries because I was out of them, and then I headed home. Then I stayed until I went back out to meet my mom.
Investigators don't have much to go on, with the exception of some security camera footage, which they use to retrace the last days of John Chocolos's life. Like this casino video, where the 87-year-old is seen with a much younger woman. Will it provide investigators with answers? The Windsor Police Department may not know who killed John Chocolos yet, but they are beginning to understand who did not. Remember the woman Nathan heard on the phone? And the woman at the casino? They are one and the same.
So John Chocolos struck up a relationship with a 25-year-old woman. over the course of a year.
She was an acquaintance of John who was going to the casino, staying overnight. The night of the homicide, she confirmed that she had talked to John, but she was kind of quickly dismissed as being involved.
Investigators have also tracked down that bookkeeper Nathan mentioned. His name is William Sati, and he too is cleared.
He had an alibi that night and was confirmed. I think he was actually out of the state at the time. I think we found him in Rhode Island.
While cleared as a suspect in the murder, Sati was later convicted of stealing some $400,000 from Chocolus' company.
But that's small change compared to the money the patriarch was handing over to family members every year.
One of the problem children was Linda. Linda was taking John's allowances and going off on spending sprees at casinos or going skiing or taking these lavish trips around the world.
Linda always felt that she deserved more than what she was getting. I don't know why she felt that way. I don't know, because she and my dad were always butting heads.
Father and daughter also butt heads over the way Nathan is being raised.
The relationship between John and Linda was always volatile, but one day it turned violent. And that was over Nathan's care. Nathan was put into a psychiatric hospital shortly after his horse, Cruz, had died. And the accusations begin to fly. Linda accuses John of smothering her son with all sorts of riches, and John is yelling at Linda, saying that she is a bad mother and that Nathan is normal and that Nathan should be treated as such. And at one point, John reaches across the table and grabs Linda by the hair and starts to pull it. So Linda swings and she starts to fight back at her father. And it's a combustible moment that probably lasted a minute plus. And they're swinging at each other, they're fighting each other, and the orderlies are summoned as well as the local police, and Linda is arrested right on the spot.
Linda chalks it up as two people cut from the same cloth.
I don't back down for my father. Yeah.
And it's just his personality not to back down.
Yeah, sure. And it's not his personality back down either. So if anyone would have fought with him, you know, it would have been me.
Linda has spent many more years fighting to protect her son from those who might treat him unkindly.
I know he led a very lonely life. You know, it's at the age where kids were being invited to birthday parties and, you know, having play dates. And nobody was calling for Nathan to go to the birthday party. And, you know, it was sad. And she hated that for her child. You know, any mother would hate it if her child wasn't included in anything. But yeah, it must have been hard for Linda not being able to fix that. Linda was a fixer. Linda had to fix things, or at least try to fix things, and she just could not fix that.
Linda and Nathan had a very unique and conflicted relationship. Nathan saw his mother as somebody who was incredibly domineering, and Linda was always trying to get him the therapy that she thought he needed. And I think Nathan wanted to get as far away from his mother as possible because Nathan didn't want to feel different from anybody else.
And with his grandfather, Nathan feels like a success. He learns about business, he's a confidant to John Chocolus, his college tuition is paid for, and so is the rent on his apartment and his credit card bills. Linda couldn't compete with that.
I think what it comes down to is Nathan's always felt torn between me and my father.
Picking sides.
Like he had to pick a side.
How's your relationship in general to your mother?
I did move out of our house, and when we were not on good terms, but I since started speaking to her again. Probably about a year ago.
Did that concern you at all in terms of looking at him as a suspect, that maybe he might exhibit behavior that you wouldn't normally see, but he does have a disorder?
That was a concern of many of us, is are the behaviors we're seeing, are the answers he's giving in that one interview that he did grant, are these more aligned with behaviors perhaps of someone who is on the autism spectrum? Or can we look at these for what we normally would kind of think This is kind of sketchy, a little suspicious. We want to delve more into this.
Was your grandpa involved during that time?
Yes, my grandpa. He facilitated financially my ability to go off on.
So for Linda, the recent fishing trips are a way of pulling her son back into her life. But now there's the murder of her father to deal with and lots of money at stake. Everybody is under the microscope.
Do you own any weapons?
No.
Anybody else in the family own any weapons?
No.
Anybody have access to any weapons? Anybody that knows anybody that has weapons? Nothing at all. Okay. So we've got no weapons, we've got no enemies we know of.
That we know of.
Do you own any firearms?
I do have an air gun. I'm not sure if that counts as a firearm, but...
Is it the only?
Yes, it is.
But after speaking with a long line of friends, family, and business associates, investigators are about to realize they've been lied to. In the wake of 87-year-old John Chocolos's brutal murder, investigators have few leads, with one notable exception: fragments of the bullets fired at the victim. There's hope that they could be traced back to a possible murder weapon. What kind of weapon was used to kill him?
It was believed to be a rifle because it was a .308 cartridge, a certain type of bullet.
And a ballistics test concludes the gun used was most likely a Sig Sauer rifle, like this one.
But in the wake of the Newtown massacre, these types of weapons were illegal to own in Connecticut, where Chocolos was murdered.
The detectives focused a lot of their attention on New Hampshire. They scoured gun dealers, I think well over 600 gun dealers, looking for that Sig Sauer rifle.
Eventually, investigators make their way to a place called Shooter's Outpost and speak with salesman Jed Warner about recent purchases. He remembers an interaction with a customer just weeks earlier.
He definitely stood out because he looked like he came off like a construction site. His pants were dirty. He was wearing like a pair of like dirty boots, like a construction feel about him. We started talking about rifles and targeting. He said, actually, I'm very interested in the Sig Sauer 716.
It's an expensive rifle, retailing for almost $2,000. Jed says he suggested other options that were more economical for target shooting, but the buyer knows what he wants.
We do all the paperwork, do the background, he passes. He just kind of walked straight out, and that was the last we saw. 2 officers from the Windsor area were there, and then a local, like a Connecticut ATF agent. We had to like go through all the stuff, try to figure out the day of sale.
And there they find it, a bill of sale for a Sig Sauer rifle. The name of the purchaser, Nathan Carmen.
And that became an incredible aha moment for investigators and potentially the smoking gun in this case.
After the discovery at Shooter's Outpost, Nathan is asked again about owning any guns.
And since, because I just wasn't feeling safe at home, I did buy a shotgun.
You did buy a shotgun?
That's correct.
Any other purchases of a firearm anytime?
No.
And that wasn't ever volunteered or brought up till investigators found this out-of-state bill of sale and then confronted Nathan with it.
And how did he respond?
Well, he acknowledged that he had bought this weapon. When asked about it, he said he lost it, and he didn't know where the gun was.
That had to be really a red flag for you all.
It was.
Most people don't lose those firearms or any firearm, but yeah, you don't normally hear, I don't know where it is.
And there was no report of him, making a report that it was stolen, lost, etc.
So what are you thinking at this point? You've been kind of connecting these dots.
Well, it gets better. There was at least 1 hour of unaccounted time during which Mr. Chocolos was shot that Nathan couldn't account for his time.
Linda arrives at this Home Depot parking lot at 3 a.m., where she and Nathan are set to meet up to go fishing. But Nathan is nowhere to be found.
You left your house on about 3? And we know you got to Glastonbury, based on your own words, on or about 4. Why would it take an hour to travel, and I'm guessing 20-something miles, at the rate of 65 miles an hour? It's just mathematically not possible.
On or around 3. About 3.
So
perhaps after.
But this security footage taken outside Nathan's apartment complex shows him leaving at 2:57 a.m. Linda tries calling her son 3 times, but his phone appears to be turned off. He finally calls her back at 4:01 a.m. Did you think you were closing in on an arrest?
I thought so. Yes.
I have to ask you straight up, were you involved in your grandfather's death? Did you kill
Absolutely not. No.
But that potential smoking gun, the Sig Sauer rifle, is still missing. Despite a months-long extensive search of Nathan's apartment, the Chocolate estate, and surrounding areas for that crucial piece of evidence, it's nowhere to be found.
And I think that's exactly what they were pinning their entire case on, was that murder weapon. Had they found it and connected it to Nathan, then Nathan would have been in handcuffs.
And so law enforcement was directed to keep working to try to build the case.
This had to be frustrating.
It just tears at you because, you know, you think you've got it. The family had put up a huge billboard on Interstate 91, you know, and coming and going to work every day, I would see that. I would see Mr. Chocolos's face. I would see, you know, reward money for information.
Even though Nathan is under a cloud of suspicion, he's still a free man, but feels like he's an outcast in his own community now. So he takes a portion of his inheritance that had been given to him by his grandfather, and he leaves the state. He travels to Vermont, and he buys an historic farmhouse, and he also bought a boat.
Nathan buys a 31-foot fishing boat, formerly called the Chicken Pox. He plans another fishing outing with his mom, Linda, who has stood by him throughout all the accusations.
And Linda is very excited about that opportunity, but also very concerned because she knows that her son is not an experienced fisherman or an experienced boater.
Linda tells friends that the plan was to fish off the coast of Block Island and head back the next morning.
She was so concerned that she had a text message conversation with people ashore, and that's a smart thing to do, to let people know what your plans are.
So she went out of the way to give them information in case something happened.
Yes, indeed.
When Linda fails to check in, her friends start to worry.
2 of her best friends reach out to authorities and say, something has happened, we need your help.
At first, we were like, okay, hopefully it's just they're overdue and they're going to come back to shore.
But after several days elapse, authorities search Nathan's home and vehicle and find some alarming items.
We start thinking that he may have intent to either harm himself and his mother or both of them.
How did you get word that something had gone wrong with that?
My cousin Charlene called me and told me that they were missing. And I said, I told her not to go on that boat.
Here is Nathan in a 31-foot aluminum boat with his mother, who's got no experience boating, and he thinks that he's the master fisherman or the master boater. Or does he think this is the perfect place to kill his mother? Because in the middle of the ocean, nobody can hear you scream.
But what really happened on that boat? Nathan Carmen answers tough questions under oath.
How often did you lie to the Windsor Police Department?
There was one inaccurate.
Staring out at that open water, probably wondering what happened to my mother, or thinking, did I just get away with murder?
His mother is still missing and feared dead.
And the question becomes, what happened? Everybody wants to know what happened.
I didn't know if she had been dragged down with the ship. Neither of us had been wearing life vests.
The media coverage was huge.
I'm just asking you to defend yourself against these people who are saying that you did something to your boat that would make it sink.
Yeah, we're done for this evening, period.
He was shooting himself in the foot on national TV.
It is absolutely unfair for the police to use the tragedy that happened to my mother and I as an opportunity to try to nail me for a murder that I didn't commit.
Nathan's grandfather, John Chocolus, had been shot to death 3 years prior to the disappearance of Linda Carmen. And once those connections were made, the story amplified.
You were convinced that Nathan had killed his grandfather.
Correct.
And now you're convinced that he killed his own mother?
It's a story about greed and heartless brutality.
Mr. Chocolus was found in a bedroom on the upper part of the house, in his bed, shot several times in the head. We have to treat everyone as a possible suspect. Anyone could have done this.
But my sisters had told me they suspected Nathan. And that just totally blew me out of the water.
The daughters of John Chocolus got very angry that there was really nothing happening with the case. They couldn't find the murder weapon. They hadn't arrested Nathan Carmen.
And it's just getting wilder and wilder.
Could a family be this burdened to have a second catastrophic event? I didn't know. This is slowly starting to move from a missing persons case to something other than a missing persons case.
It's been 3 years since John Chocolos's murder, with no charges ever filed. Now, the family is facing yet another tragedy as Chocolos's grandson, Nathan Carmen's boat sinks on a fishing trip, with Nathan's mom, Linda, missing and presumed drowned. We're going to head out on a ride on the open water to get a better idea of what happened out here. I met up with Dave Farrell, a maritime lawyer for Nathan's boat insurers. So let's pick up with when the Coast Guard gets involved in this.
They had a lot of vessels out here. They had a lot of aerial searches, and they were really crisscrossing an area that eventually was 64,000 square miles.
That's a big coverage area.
Yeah, the state of Georgia.
And then 2 days later, there's a big shock.
The Orient Lucky finds a life raft 106 miles south of Martha's Vineyard, and in it is Nathan Carmen alone.
With his crew already snapping pictures and recording video, the ship's captain is alerted to a life raft in the water.
After spotting Nathan Carmen and his life raft at sea, I sounded the alarm for our crew to prepare for the rescue efforts, and we were ready to rescue him.
They threw him a life ring, and he grabbed it with his hands. He got dragged up toward the hull of the ship. He was able to push off the side of the ship with his outstretched hand, and he was able to climb up the gangway.
He got onto the ladder. We pulled the ladder up on board.
When Nathan gets aboard the Orient Lucky, the kid looked like Aquaman. There was no physical distress in his well-being. He wasn't dehydrated. He was not hypothermic.
The captain of the Orient Lucky doesn't see anything wrong with him. This is astounding.
I got the call from my supervisor that he'd been located and recovered. I was shocked, and I was thankful. I was happy that there was a survivor, but it was also concerning because Linda hadn't been recovered.
When I found out that, Linda was lost at sea and, I knew she wasn't coming back, it was just, I just had flashbacks of us growing up and just, the good times that we did have. And then, of course, the guilt and the regret that I had of how I treated her in the end. You just don't think that you're going to lose somebody so suddenly like that.
We receive a call from the Coast Guard that Nathan was picked up by a merchant vessel in the shipping lanes in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. First thing you say is, okay, where's Linda? Linda's not with him, just Nathan.
Back on land, with his lawyer present, Nathan's interviewed by Alfred Bucco, an investigator with the South Kingston, Rhode Island Police Department. This audio's never been broadcast before.
I just went in there and said, Nathan, tell me what happened.
We went out to Block Canyon. It was light, but the sun wasn't over the horizon yet. And we started trolling.
Okay.
And I heard strange noise coming from the engine compartment. So I opened up the hatch in front of the pilot house, and I saw that there was a lot of water in the bilge.
He went and shut down the engine and moved aft to where his mother was.
He said he told his mom to reel in the lines. How did he describe what was happening with the commotion?
He said to his mother only one thing during this calamity, and it was reel in the lines. And she said only one thing in return, okay, I will. At that point, he went up into the wheelhouse, and he says that he started moving emergency gear up to the bow. He wasn't quite ready to abandon ship, but he wanted to be ready.
I didn't realize we were sinking.
Okay.
I knew there was water in the bilge. I knew there was a lot of water because it was already up to that level. Just why I wanted to bring the safety stuff as a precaution.
Okay.
But I thought I was going to find the problem and fix it.
The third time that he's been in the wheelhouse and failed to radio, he's walking forward to the bow, and all of a sudden, in a split second, the boat sinks.
Boats don't sink that fast.
No. And it sank quickly, like immediately it was out of sight. And that's how he says he never saw his mother again.
He calls for his mother throughout the rest of the day, and he said upon nightfall, you know, he gave up trying to search for her, and he went to sleep, and then drifted through the Atlantic Ocean until he was located. So let's get back to your mother. You talk to her, you know, all the time. You know, you go out fishing twice a week. How would you describe, you know, your relationship with her? Is it good?
I don't see the relevance to this particular incident here.
Yeah, I concur.
I think this interview's over. Thank you, though.
After the interview is over, from our perspective, we're like, okay, this isn't just a missing persons investigation. We may be dealing with maybe a homicide.
Captain Hengdong observed Nathan walking the deck of the Orient Lucky for hours at a time by himself, staring out at that open water, probably wondering what happened to my mother, or thinking, did I just get away with murder?
And soon, the whole world will hear from Nathan Carman in his own words.
She'd always been kind of reluctant about safety. I guess she had good reason to be.
New developments in that mystery at sea. Rescued after 8 days in a life raft, searchers had given up.
Nathan Carman and his mother went fishing last week. He survived the ordeal, but his mother didn't make it.
Now authorities are trying to figure out what happened.
The media coverage was huge. This was a story that made headlines around the country.
Initially, Nathan avoids the media, but eventually agrees to an interview with then ABC News correspondent Lindsay Janis in 2017. At his suggestion, they meet at a park near his home.
So take me through that evening. You met at the marina in Rhode Island, and then what?
We met at the marina in Rhode Island, and we had bait, which we got on board. And as we were heading out into the harbor, I had asked her a couple times in the past, will you go to the canyons with me? And she'd always been kind of reluctant about safety, and I guess she had good reason to be.
While Nathan and Linda were still missing and the Coast Guard scouring the Atlantic, investigators back on land began searching through their vehicles here at this marina, looking for clues that might help in the search.
It looked like he had been somewhat almost living out of his truck or sleeping in his truck. We found some receipts from different marine stores.
Items purchased at area marinas in the hours before the fateful voyage included a rock-type anchor that would never have worked for Nathan's boat, and then some lengths of chain. They were curious purchases.
But there was also a bucket of eels that was in Nathan's truck. That stood out to me because eels are often used as bait when fishing for striped bass. And if you left the dock and didn't take your bait, what are you using for bait if you're going fishing?
Nathan tells us the same story he told police, that his mom had been concerned about safety ahead of the boat trip.
And I want to stress that it wasn't an argument, because I want to stress that it was not an argument. She had always been kind of skittish. We're stopping right here with that question.
Oh, okay. But why not reach out for help? The Coast Guard said there was no Mayday call.
I had a radio, and there was also an EPIRB, which is an emergency position indicating radio beacon, on the boat, like someone needs to be medevaced, or when you know you're sinking. But I didn't know that we were sinking until we sank.
Nathan said that there was a lot of commotion going on and the water was being taken on in here. So where would his mom have been when all of this is happening?
Right where you are.
So she would have been right back in this area?
Yes.
But they're not speaking? I mean, and she doesn't know that they're going down?
Nathan has excellent line of sight on her the whole time, and yet he says he never saw her afterwards.
At that point, I didn't know if she had been dragged down with the ship, because neither of us had been wearing life vests. I assumed that if she had been on the surface, that she would have been calling out to me and I would have been able to find her.
According to Nathan, days go by and he huddles on the life raft, keeping a lookout for rescuers.
I was looking out at the horizon for other ships or for helicopters when conditions were good. When the waves were high, because they got to like 13 feet and they were breaking waves at a few points, a few days.
It must have been terrifying.
Yes.
But to some, Nathan's claim of drifting for over a week in rough seas before being rescued defies belief.
The initial videos showing this guy walking up the gangway of the ship without any great problem. He seemed to be just fine.
You would be in dire straits after, 5 or 6 days.
If you laid on that couch for 8 days and you got up to go to the bathroom, your legs would be wobbly because you haven't used them.
At the same time that Nathan and Linda's vehicles were searched at the docks, police in Vermont were conducting a search of Nathan's house, which was under construction.
The investigators find, modems, SIM cards, a few other things. The one thing they don't find is a computer. Whatever computer he was using to conduct his online purchases has disappeared.
Another item that was seized during the search was a lengthy letter that Nathan had written to an unknown priest that described his relationship and his view of his mother.
My mother's bullying, calling me a quitter, a stuck-up snob who thinks he is a king, and a piece of basically characterized my childhood. One night, though, I went to bed imagining myself as essentially a master of my own hell, joying in inflicting grave bodily suffering on other people. So, yeah.
After his interview with Alfred Bucco, Nathan has all but stopped talking to the police and is never questioned about the letter or his missing computer. Reporter Lindsay Janis is one of the few people he is willing to talk to.
I know I wasn't responsible for anything that resulted from the boat sinking. I know I wasn't responsible for my mom's death.
You were convinced that Nathan had killed his grandfather.
Correct.
And now you're convinced that he killed his own mother?
Yes.
That's pretty dark stuff. If the interview hadn't already made Nathan's story seem a little fishy, the follow-up was even more eye-opening.
I did not cause my mother's death. We're done here this evening.
If you have nothing to hide, there shouldn't be a problem answering the questions.
Oh, hi, Dave. Nice to meet you. Hi, how are you?
I'm Matt. Nice
Hi,
to meet you.
Matt, nice to meet you, Matt. Thanks so much for taking us out. Initially, when everybody else was scratching their heads and wondering, wow, this poor guy, what happened to his mom? For the average person out there who's looking at this and taking it at face value, folks who know the water, like you do, had your doubts.
Absolutely. People had doubts about this story from the beginning.
With Linda Carmen presumed lost at sea, her reportedly tumultuous relationship with her son Nathan was under renewed scrutiny. He sits down with 2020 for a second interview, which now holds new significance.
If someone said that you did not get along with your mother, that you did not like her, is there any truth to that at all?
No, there's not any truth to that. Our relationship had grown from where it had been. We did have a challenging relationship at one point in my life, but she was the closest person in the world to me after my grandfather passed.
Will you inherit all of what your mother had?
That's something that I can't comment on at this time.
But unbeknownst to Nathan, his mom has decided not to leave him any inheritance. She even records a video message obtained exclusively by 2020, explaining that he won't be getting her house.
Hey, big guy, I guess if you're watching this, you're watching this. I want to explain why I did what I did, and why my will is stated the way it is. I feel that when you moved out, you took everything that was of value to you and everything you wanted. That's my feeling.
And in her written last will and testament, dated 3 years before she disappeared, Linda explicitly excludes Nathan as a beneficiary.
By now, more details of John Chocolos's death and the subsequent investigation have risen to the surface.
Initially, the media was unaware that Nathan's grandfather, John Chocolos, had been shot to death in his bed 3 years prior to the disappearance of Linda Carmen. And once those connections were made, the story amplified. It wasn't a bittersweet rescue story anymore. It was something potentially much more devious.
So, at what point in your life would you say that you became really close with your grandfather?
Here's where I have a bit of an issue. My understanding was we were going to be sitting down and we were going to be talking about
yeah, the raft is my
survival
next
at
bit,
sea.
but we did explain that we need to hear about your whole life leading up to this
That's
incident.
Something
How can people know who Nathan is if we don't tell them? What was your relationship like with your grandfather?
I'm not talking about my relationship with my grandfather or with. If you want to ask me any more questions on that line, we're done here.
Can you tell me more about what your grandfather did? He was a big figure in this part of the country.
That's not what this interview is about.
He gets really defensive if people pry a little bit too much. And the way that he shut her off on so many questions and wouldn't cooperate, he was shooting himself in the foot on national TV.
Since we spoke a week ago, there's been a lot of speculation. People are suspicious of you. What do you want to say to those people who are saying something about his story that just isn't adding up?
I'm not aware that those people exist.
There are suspicions about the boat trip. Since we last got together a week ago,
I've said the way it happened.
I'm just asking you to defend yourself against these people who are saying that you did something to your boat that would make it sink.
That's not true.
Nathan had never been interviewed at length by a network or by a reporter, so this was something new to Nathan, and I think Nathan thought it was going to go one way when it certainly went another way.
Was there an issue with the boat that needed to be fixed?
No, there were. We're done.
Nathan, I'm trying to give you an opportunity to speak out against these allegations that have been made.
The only way that I can speak out against them is to say what actually happened, and that's what I've been trying to do.
Another thing that's happened since we last got together, police searched your mom's home.
Yeah,
Did you know anything about that?
We're done for this evening period. We're done
We're
here.
not trying to make you uncomfortable. We're trying to give you an opportunity to answer some of these allegations.
We're done here this evening.
If you have nothing to hide, there shouldn't be a problem answering the questions.
He walked out. He walked out of the interview, only to come back.
Police never arrested you for the murder of your grandfather. Do you think it is unfair that people are bringing that up and talking about that now?
It is absolutely unfair for the police to use the tragedy that happened to my mother and I as an opportunity to try to nail me for a murder that I didn't commit.
Can you understand when people see that you were the last person to see two people alive? They see that and they say you are either the most unlucky man alive or you had something to do with those two deaths. What do you say to that?
I say that there's no relationship.
Later that month, Nathan holds a memorial service for his mom. It's sparsely attended by some of her friends. Linda's sisters are notably absent.
Now, Linda hasn't even been declared dead yet. Nobody in his family is willing to go because many of us in his family believe that Nathan is truly the culprit.
I'm very grateful to the friends and family who attended in memory of my mom.
Nathan, you've been through so much. How have you been these last several weeks?
It's been very difficult.
We had no boat. We had no body. But as in any investigation, there's always evidence that can be recovered. It's just a matter of making sure that you know where to look.
It's all hands on deck at that point to try to uncover the truth.
As with the death of John Chocolos, according to investigators, there isn't enough evidence to charge Nathan with a crime. But in a twist of fate, a seemingly innocuous insurance claim for the sunken boat is about to take the saga of Nathan Carmen in an unexpected direction.
Some of these strange occurrences maybe could be chalked up to an inexperienced fisherman, a guy who's panicking.
You know, I spent a lot of time with Nathan. I think he was cold, calculating, and had this whole story planned out to explain the disappearance of his mother and the sinking of the vessel.
The idea that he drifted for a week in that life raft just didn't hold water for you.
Not even for a second.
The Nathan Carmen case was incredibly explosive. A young man is plucked out of the ocean. That just conjures up all of these images of, say, Tom Hanks in Castaway.
Author Casey Sherman has spent the last 2.5 years researching the case for his new book, Blood in the Water.
The story is so complex and it has so many layers to it. Not only do you have one potential murder, but it's the story about a family and how wealth can corrupt.
As investigators continue digging into Nathan Carmen's story of being lost at sea, he takes action, filing an insurance claim for $85,000 to recoup the loss of his boat, the chickenpox.
It happened very promptly, and that indicated to me that this guy's really serious.
The insurance company is not going to pay Nathan. In fact, they are going to take Nathan to court. Nathan also didn't back down.
We filed our suit to deny insurance coverage. We were in for a fight. We came away with the distinct impression that almost everything he said to us was a lie. There were holes in every aspect of his story.
Holes in his story and his boat. Here at this marina where Nathan's odyssey began, fellow boaters noticed odd behavior in him the day before that fateful trip.
It kind of caught my eye when I saw him leaning over the back and drilling 2 holes in the transom of the boat. I asked him, "What are you doing?" That's why he told me, he says, He's taking the trim tabs off.
Trim tabs are stabilization devices that help lift the boat up higher on the water. Nathan admits to removing them, leaving holes in his boat, but says he patched them up with a marine putty.
I patched the holes. They seemed to be well patched. And at the time my mom and I went out, I felt that one, I knew those holes were above the water line, and two, I felt that they were securely patched.
The idea that he was patching up those holes, that putty, the patching didn't work?
It wouldn't work. My theory is that he was trying to make it look like he was deliberately altering the boat in a dangerous fashion.
So that maybe it looked like he made a mistake.
He's very calculating. He wanted people to be able to point to, oh, no wonder the boat sank.
Attorney Dave Farrow represented Nathan's boat insurance companies and has looked into Nathan's account of what happened for years. Nathan's story is that his boat started taking on water, but he failed to put out a distress call because he didn't think the boat was sinking. One would think then maybe he would call out for help, the Mayday situation, right? Did he do that?
No, and he had ample opportunity because each of the times that he went into the wheelhouse to carry gear forward, he was within arm's length of the microphone for his VHF radio, and a good one.
This is where the emergency equipment is, right? Here?
Yeah, right here. A microphone within arm's reach. And he came in here 3 times to get survival gear and bring it up to the bow. So he was within an arm's length 3 times he could have picked it up.
All of these things sound pretty odd. Maybe you can chalk them up to panic, an inexperienced fisherman, but you would have to have hard evidence to really show that he wasn't where he should have been.
I got an oceanographer to assess whether it was possible for him to drift in a life raft to where the Orient Lucky picked him up 7 days later.
And was it?
Absolutely impossible. Physically impossible.
I looked at drifting buoys, I looked at historical data, I looked at thermal images of the Gulf Stream rings. All of these different systems showed the currents going westward, and Nathan claimed he drifted eastward. And that did not make any sense.
And Nathan's aunts aren't buying his alleged fish tales either.
New twists in a story making national headlines involving Nathan Carmen.
They file what is known as a slayer petition, which prevents a person from inheriting property from someone they murdered.
Nathan Carmen's aunts do not want him to inherit that money, and they say essentially profit off of 2 deaths they believe he caused.
When Nathan walks into court, he's actually got a suit, and he's cleaned up, he's shaven.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Nathan Carmen appearing on my own behalf.
He looks like a young, aspiring law student.
The loss of my mom has been extremely difficult for me, so I can sympathize with petitioners in that respect.
He ended up taking depositions. He ended up going into court and arguing motions.
I'll say that some of the petitioners had awfully substantial motive. And I had very, very little.
He ended up putting up his own defense.
You saw me sort of tell the truth the whole
But in this deposition obtained by 2020, it's Nathan in the hot seat.
This is the deposition of Nathan Carmen.
Did you have a close relationship with your mother, Linda Carmen?
I would say that I did, yes.
When asked to respond to claims that he lied to police during their interviews with him in 2013, Nathan clams up.
How often did you lie to the Windsor Police Department?
There was one inaccurate. I'm pleading the 5th.
Pleading the 5th as to lying to the Windsor Police Department after your grandfather is dead.
That's
Is
what
that
he
correct?
said.
Okay. Nathan pleads the 5th 81 times during this deposition.
I plead the 5th. I plead the 5th. I plead the 5th. And I plead the 5th.
Meaning he declines to answer questions to avoid potentially incriminating himself.
I plead the 5th.
That's damaging to Nathan, I think, in the public's mind. Who takes the 5th? You know, mobsters take the 5th. Gang lords take the 5th. Not somebody that's completely innocent.
Nathan Carmen caught a legal break today after a judge tossed out the lawsuit his aunts had filed to keep him from collecting millions of dollars from his grandfather's estate.
The judge dismisses the case after he rules John Chocolos wasn't a resident of New Hampshire.
The newspapers reported it as a tremendous win for Nathan. I wasn't too troubled by it.
Nathan is off the hook for his family lawsuit, but his insurance case is looming, and investigators have him in their sight.
Pieces of the puzzle had started to come together.
There were too many inconsistencies.
There's no such thing as a perfect crime.
Nathan Carmen and his insurer head to court in Providence, Rhode Island, battling it out in what would be Nathan's biggest legal challenge yet.
Was Nathan at fault for the sinking of his boat, or was he owed a payday?
Nathan Carmen and his lawyer saying absolutely nothing, heading to Providence Federal Court this morning for the first day of the civil trial against Carmen.
He's got everything to lose here. If the court determines that he is negligent in his mother's death, that can open up the potential for criminal charges. Nathan at times was very agitated during the trial, but he was also very active, always leaning over and having conversations with his attorney. And he was right in the thick of things.
He takes the stand, sticking to his story of what happened on that boat. What was he like on the stand?
He is very articulate when he wants to be, very exacting, but also very evasive.
Nathan had no emotion when he testified. That may be because he is on the autism spectrum. And he talked about his mother in a way that she was more of a nuisance than she was a help to him while that boat was going down.
The judge asked him, "What's going on with your mother during all this time?" And Nathan's peculiar answer was, "My mother was part of the problem rather than the solution to a sinking boat."
With the case now in the judge's hands, Nathan talks to the media outside the courthouse.
This isn't about money. It's an $85,000 claim. I almost feel like I have a responsibility to my mom to make sure that the truth comes out.
At the end of the trial, the judge rules that Nathan was negligent with regard to the sinking of the chicken pox.
That was a small victory for me because at least a little bit of justice was prevailing through it all.
The civil case acted as the de facto criminal case. FBI investigators, Coast Guard investigators, attorneys, prosecutors, they all had front row seats.
Now it transitioned to his house in Vermont.
Pieces of the puzzle had started to come together and had started to paint a picture for us that this was in fact a criminal act.
There were too many inconsistencies. There were too many things that just didn't add up.
It became very, very clear that Nathan had committed a crime on the high seas.
We don't have a body, we don't have a boat, so it's a very, very difficult case to try to prove. The grand jurors have to decide, is there enough evidence to proceed and indict?
It took several years, but Nathan Carmen is now charged with killing his mother.
Nathan agrees to meet with investigators, but has no clue what's about to happen.
Nathan was surprised when he was advised that he was under arrest for the murder of Linda Carmen.
It was like something out of the golden age of piracy. Nathan was charged with murder on the high seas.
According to an indictment, Carmen devised a scheme to defraud his grandfather's estate and to obtain money from the trust, and the murders were part of this scheme.
However, the indictment doesn't charge Nathan with the murder of John Chocolos.
Medical records, school records.
Nathan hires defense attorney Marty Manella.
Marty Manella is a long-time, very bulldogged litigator. And when he met Nathan, he not only found a client, but he found a son.
He had literally no support. That was probably the hardest thing that Nathan had to endure, the fact that he had no one. But he had us. He really had us. And I had never in 50 years of practicing law had that kind of relationship with a client. Never.
As he's escorted into federal court for arraignment, cameras catch Nathan defiantly proclaiming his innocence.
Not guilty.
Before pleading not guilty to the court as well.
During Nathan's detention hearing, his aunts read a letter to the judge saying that if you let him go, they would be in fear for their life.
I was very relieved that Nathan was going to be put behind bars. If Nathan was not arrested and not contained, I really think he would have gone on a murder spree.
For years, Nathan had lived in solitude in Vermont. He had never threatened anyone. So to me, it was unusual that they were in fear of what?
The court sides with his aunts and denies Nathan's bail, setting a trial date for October 2nd, 2023. Marty and his team get to work.
It was a huge undertaking, and it was a daily, 7-day-a-week thing. It really became part of our lives.
Nathan was incredibly active in his defense. Every waking hour when he wasn't in his jail cell, he was at the prison library, poring over legal books.
This case was his whole life. He wanted his day in court. He wanted to clear his name.
The day of June 15th, 2023, came as a shock. They were just a few months away from trial.
We've learned Nathan Carmen has died while awaiting a trial for his mother's death.
I got a call in the morning. Nathan was gone, and he hung himself. And I just cried.
Nathan took his own life. He wasn't depressed. He wasn't despondent. We were all looking forward to that October date so that we could have this trial.
Despite all the family court battles and accusations, Nathan's aunts come to pay their respects at his funeral.
I attended Nathan's funeral. Myself and my sisters were there. I was very sad.
Nathan's attorney paid for the funeral, paid for his cremation, and then gave his eulogy.
Non-violent and loving young man. Sleep with the angels, my dear friend. It was probably the toughest thing I ever did because it was like losing a family member. It may sound crazy. You lose cases, you lose clients, but you don't have that kind of contact that we had with this person.
I think he is both a victim and a villain in his own story. Nathan Carmen remains an enigma.
The criminal charges against Nathan were dismissed. So in the eyes of the law, Nathan is an innocent man still today.
Months after Nathan Carmen's funeral, a Connecticut judge officially declares his mom, Linda, deceased 7 years after she disappeared at sea. The Windsor Police Department tells 2020 that John Chocolos's murder case is still active.
What I'd like people to remember about my dad, he was kind, he was loving. He'd give you a hard time, but he always did it out of love. Linda was so kind and generous to her friends and the people around her. And I remember all the good times that Linda and I had.
What do you want people to know and remember about your uncle, John?
He's a guy that did it himself. I mean, I loved that guy, you know, and he loved me.
How much do you miss him all these years later?
Every day. Yep. We went to the cemetery today. Nathan's got a stone there, next to my uncle. Why is he buried there? There's no stone there for my cousin Linda. Where's her stone?
Nathan should be remembered as a troubled soul. I'm happy, I'm relieved that Nathan was buried in the family plot next to my dad. Nathan, the child, belongs where he is. He needs to rest.
So in broad daylight, a man is shot dead in his place of business on a busy street.
I knew as soon as I saw it. I knew he was gone.
Just 2 blocks behind me, Bob Eidman was found robbed and murdered.
Bob Eidman was shot 3 times. That 3rd shot is being an execution.
I just all the way there saying, no, 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 Bob.
There were just floods and floods of police cars coming in and just total chaos.
We're with the Major Case Squad.
They only have 5 days, so the clock is ticking.
Diane found out on the site that her husband had been murdered.
Yes, she did.
She makes this statement, something like this has happened before.
There were numerous individuals who could have done something such as this.
He asked me a question that just kind of floored me. He said, "We're trying to find out about your brother's lifestyle."
What is it like to all of a sudden learn that there's this whole other secret part of his life?
People are going to find out some stuff they're probably not going to like.
June 8th, 2007 was a typical day in St. Charles. It was a sunny day when I was proceeding southwest here on First Capitol Drive.
So it was about to break 80 degrees on this Friday morning around 11 a.m. And as Officer Dean Meyer's patrol car is making its way toward Interstate 70, a mail carrier was on her rounds too. This security video showing her dropping off mail at a strip mall grocery store, then driving her truck a few doors down to enter the office where Bob Eidman sold car insurance. Nobody heard her first scream.
Our mail carrier was running up the street and she was flailing her arms and she was yelling for the police.
Deborah Kennedy was the first person to hear those desperate cries and tried to catch up with her as the mail carrier ran into traffic on the busy road before Officer Meyer spotted her.
I saw the mail carrier running up the hill with the phone in her hand.
Stop, please, stop. There's a man, I'm delivering the mail right now, he's lying on the floor with blood all over him.
I asked what's going on, and she said Bob was laying on the floor and he had blood on his face.
And she tries to investigate what's going on. She goes into Bob's office and gets the shock of her life.
I went inside to see if I could help him. And when I walked in, there was plenty of blood. I watched his chest didn't move. I knew as soon as I saw it. I knew he was gone. Let me breathe for a second.
It was St. Charles's first murder of 2007. And right from the start, it was the kind of thing that just isn't supposed to happen here. That's because St. Charles, Missouri is an idyllic bedroom community. It's just over the bridge from St. Louis with a historic downtown and historic values as well. I guess the idea is that you're supposed to shed the stress of the big city as you come across the wide Missouri River and land here. But as we know, money woes, lies and rage and desperation, the grip of fear, they do not stop at the river's edge.
Now we've got a whole team of officers from the St. Charles Police Department. They've converged on the scene of Bob Eidman's murder.
There were just, floods and floods of police cars coming in and just total chaos.
Immediately I responded to the area, to the scene. Bob is laying on the floor between the two desks. He's laying on his back, and there's a pool of blood around his head.
Bob Eidman was shot 3 times. The first shot was superficial. It was a grazing wound to his chin. The second shot was to his neck, shoulder area, which knocked him down.
According to St. Charles homicide detective Don Stepp, the third and fatal shot had been fired through Bob Eidman's left eye as the assailant stood over his prone body.
I would definitely classify that third shot as being an execution.
This was an insurance office, and it was a fairly open area. We collected bullet casings, bullets, bullet fragments. We would mark the position, set up little yellow tents called photo markers. We would photograph it. We dusted for fingerprints. You're hoping that maybe you will find one fingerprint that may lead to a particular suspect.
Police are seeking out anyone who might have spotted something that morning in Bob's office. With her office directly below Bob's, Deborah Kennedy didn't see anyone, but she might have heard something.
I think it was probably around 10:30 or 11 o'clock. A friend of mine had come in. You know, I heard a couple noises, and we both kind of looked at each other, and then I heard a big thud on my ceiling. And we're kind of like, what the heck, is Bob doing up there? And so, being the way I am, I yelled up through the rafters, hey, Bob, keep it down. I'm trying to work down here.
We came to the conclusion that those loud bangs that she heard was the gunshots in Bob's office.
Police quickly worked to gather information about the victim. His name is Bob Eidman. He's 48 years old. He was married for a very long time, had no children, and worked in the insurance industry.
But just recently, like the past 2 years, had just started this new company. He'd got like a franchise. He just started that on his own.
As news begins to spread that something bad has happened at Bob's office, concerned friends and associates in the insurance business, they rush to the site, like the longtime colleague who asked that we call her Dana.
What made you want to go over there?
That's my friend. I wanted to make sure he was okay. I remember locking up my office. I had a client in there, and she saw how distraught I was. And I'm just in the car, just all the way there saying, no, Bob.
What happened when you got there?
Of course, they're spectators, so someone said that someone got shot. Didn't see Bob, didn't see him waving in the window, didn't see any sign of him at all. And then when they took his body out of the office, we knew it was Bob's body because he was a big guy.
What's that moment like?
Oh my goodness. It was the worst.
Local reporters have arrived on the scene as well. Those reporters noticed that a woman pulls up, and it turns out that she is the now widow of Robert Eidman. Her name is Diane, and Diane approaches the reporters, asking them if they know what's happening. And the reporters are saying that they feel uncomfortable telling her about her husband, so they direct her to the police.
But Diane said that she hadn't heard from Bob all day, which was odd, and she kept trying to call him, and he never answered the office phone. So when she shows up and seen all the police cars, she knew something had happened, and she identified herself.
Diane found out on the site, didn't she, that her husband had been murdered?
Yes, she did.
As investigators comb the area looking for video of any potential suspects, they happen upon this grocery store just a few doors down from Bob Eidman's office. Inside, they take note of the security camera that captured the mail carrier earlier that morning. It was right about there, pointed directly towards the front door. Once they get a look at the video it recorded, it's the first big break in the case.
Police believe Eidman was working alone when someone walked inside his business, fatally shot him, then took off.
Insurance agent Bob Eidman is dead, shot to death in his office along a busy thoroughfare near the interstate in St. Charles, Missouri.
We are west of the city of St. Louis, which most people kind of relate that to the arch.
They are just separated by a river, so just hop on the bridge and you're in St. Charles.
And like this town's famous Christmas tradition celebration and their lively Oktoberfest, murder comes but once a year.
St. Charles averages about 1.5 homicides a year.
It's a pretty peaceful community, and people look out for each other.
A cold-blooded murder is not something St. Charles is known for, and the local cops will probably need some help with what looks like a big investigation. So they appeal to a special group for help.
A request was made to notify the Major Case Squad.
And they contact other departments that are in our area, and they send detectives to assist us.
More than 30 detectives with the Major Case Squad are now looking for his killer.
This elite Major Case Squad has a very high rate of success. 80% of their cases are solved. But with all this manpower, there's one catch. They only have 5 days to get the job done. So the clock is ticking.
They're coming from all other agencies. At some point, they need to get back to theirs.
The police canvassed First Capital right there in front of the shop.
How you doing?
Hi, what's up?
We're with the Major Case Squad, and we're investigating a homicide that happened here Friday afternoon.
Asking, did you notice something on June 7th?
And then you can see in the distance those apartment houses. You talked to all the people who lived in those apartment houses too, didn't you?
Every door was knocked on multiple times until we got contact.
And could one part of Bob Eidman's line of work have put him in jeopardy?
Robert Eidman's specialty in the insurance company was dealing with high-risk drivers, individuals that could not get insurance through traditional places, people that had prior traffic violations.
He wasn't taking checks because apparently those had been bounced, and this was back in the day when checks were a thing.
But his good friend and insurance colleague Dana, she felt Bob was taking too great a risk with the form of payment he did take.
So he would accept cash against a lot of people who advised him not to take cash.
Though he was known for accepting cash, he doesn't have a safe. Instead, police learned Bob would put the cash he received from clients into a far less secure place.
There was a drawer in Bob's desk that was locked, and you'd have to use a screwdriver to manipulate the lock to be able to open it.
When police managed to open the drawer and they checked the cash box, oh, there's money inside, about $200.
There was no forced entry, but it could have absolutely been a robbery. I know one of the things they were looking for was Bob's wallet missing.
And you're looking for anywhere that somebody might have thrown something, like Bob Eidman's wallet.
From the top of the roof, all through the grass, ditches, sewers, everywhere. We could not find the wallet. The wallet's going to be 90% of the time in a man's back pocket.
And to get that wallet out, you would have had to struggle between the wallet and the inside of the pants, which caused some friction. I recommended that we cut the pants pockets out and send them to the crime lab. We just thought maybe a sample of skin cells could be found inside Bob's pocket.
When we touch something or brush up against something, some of our DNA is transferred to the other object. If they're located, those skin cells can be broken down into DNA.
So you were checking for DNA everywhere else, but this was just kind of out of the blue. You just thought, well, you know, we might as well give this a try.
Yes, sir. It was the first time that I'd ever heard of anybody's pants pockets getting cut out.
While one team is feverishly working to gather physical evidence, another team is talking to anyone they can find, talking to family, friends, anything that will help them glean information about Bob Eidman.
Bob was a big teddy bear. He was friendly, he was bubbly. He called me wild woman. I think it has something to do with my hair. It grew on me.
Bob was a funny little guy, and I say little meaning that I think he was probably about 5'4", 5'6".
If we were going to say what size personality he had, like small to large, where would you put him on the scale there, Pam?
I'd say extra large.
His persona was just so, hey, you guys see me? I'm here.
How would you describe his relationship to authority growing up?
Not good. He defied authority with regularity. He had to go to summer school every summer. In fact, my parents tried to bribe him and said, hey, if you can graduate from high school in 4 years, we'll give you a car. He's like, show me the car first.
We were in high school together. Bob was pretty forward. He liked to talk to the ladies and hang out and visit. Then he met Diane and he fell in love with her and they were real close.
I believe Diane and Bobby made a fantastic couple. I really liked Diane. She'd put Bobby in his place. Bobby say something smart, she'd say something smart right back at him.
She was taller than him. I don't think it really mattered to him at all.
He ended up getting some lifts, so he felt like he was as tall as his wife.
Bob and Diane had been married for 20 plus years. They did not have any children.
So instead, his office featured photos of the muscle cars that he loved, while under his desk, he kept a copy of the Dream Girls CD. He finally got to be his own boss, but there were great challenges, weren't there?
Yeah, he started talking like, well, the business isn't doing so good. I haven't had that many people come in.
He kept saying, you know, if I don't make this in the next couple months, I'm not sure.
I might go under.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make it.
Think about all that financial stress. At least one person thinks it was taking a terrible toll.
I thought he committed suicide.
You thought he was so despondent that he might have taken his own life.
I did.
Remember that video camera in the grocery store next to Bob's, pointing toward the street in front? Police have been poring over the footage, and now they may have found something of interest. There, that white car.
At 10:50 a.m., you see the vehicle drive past the front doors, and 4 minutes later, you see it drive past the front doors, I believe a little slower, and almost like creeping along looking for something.
Was this driver making sure the coast was clear?
It wasn't the greatest picture, I remember that. It's always frustrating when you can't identify the people inside the vehicle.
One thing we can tell is a white four-door vehicle. Luckily,
I'm impressed you can tell it's a four-door vehicle. It looks like a white car. But it turned out the small St. Charles Police Department had a car maven.
we have an individual at the time that could almost identify almost any type of vehicle. He was a big car guy. He said it was a Ford Focus.
Like, I like cars, but honestly, wow.
We're kind of looking at this several different ways. Is he having problems with a customer with a white Ford Focus?
The bad news is that in St. Charles County, there are 1,300 Ford Focuses. In the state of Missouri, there are 5,000.
5,000 is a big number to have to deal with.
But they're not finding anything suspicious until a gift-wrapped lead suddenly falls into their lap. A white car is crashed and abandoned nearby. And get this about the driver.
He had bloody clothing on. Why has he got Bob's business card? I hope this is it.
A mail carrier found Eidman's body shot several times inside his Brook Auto Insurance agency at about 12:30 Friday afternoon.
So in broad daylight, a man is shot dead in his place of business on a busy street. I'm sure it did strike fear.
I don't understand why somebody would kill somebody right here.
It was such a senseless killing that nobody really understood what was going on.
I didn't want to go back to work the next morning. I wanted to get the heck out of Dodge. I wanted to get out of town.
Police here in St. Charles, Missouri still had no motive, no witnesses, and no way to quell the rising fear of the St. Charles community. Fear and anxiety that grew even more after 3 men broke into a bowling alley, took $700, and tied up the janitor in the process.
2 men wearing masks and carrying guns rob a St. Charles bowling alley.
Well, here is proof they had a gun, a bullet hole left in the office windows. They busted in through the back door, shot up the office, tried to shoot open a safe.
Geographically, it was just down the street from Brooks Insurance.
And it was a bowling alley that we all bowled at, so at first we all thought it was tied together.
So people wondered if there was a connection between the two robberies.
And we looked at that, seeing if they were connected. And In the course of that investigation, we were able to eliminate it from being a part of this case.
Police are knee-deep in Bob Eidman's murder investigation, and they come upon a really interesting scene. It's an abandoned, crashed white car. And when they track down the owner, well, there's a couple of really eye-popping pieces of information.
He had bloody clothing on, and he also had one of Robert Eidman's business cards. Why does he have bloody clothing? Is it his blood? Is it Bob's blood? We have some questions and we need answered. This could be it.
It blew my mind, like, whoa.
Travis Wade Ensley is about to blow a lot of minds at police headquarters, where leads in Bob Eidman's murder have been hard to come by.
The car that I wrecked was a white four-door Saturn.
Which might have looked like the car that was captured on the footage.
The next thing I know, I'm at St. Charles Police Station getting questioned for murder.
Police now feel that he has a lot of explaining to do. So as Travis recalls, his story goes kind of something like this.
I needed new insurance on my car. My buddy's like, check this guy out, and called him up, gave me good rates. And then like a week later, I had been out, had a couple drinks. Okay. I wound up wrecking my car right by my apartment. My airbags deployed and it knocked the sense out of me, and I like staggered down the hill, like right to my apartment, didn't remember nothing.
Okay.
Next day, I woke up, I walk out my door, my car's not there.
So Travis calls police to report his car as stolen, but then is stunned to suddenly find himself a potential person of interest in a murder.
I was scared to death.
They were coming at you.
Yeah, they were coming at me pretty good.
Travis has what seems like a likely story about why there's blood on a shirt. He said that when he crashed his car, he got a bloody nose. Cops will check out his story, so they're not quite ready to clear him.
And they went and looked into certain, my alibi and this and that. They're like, okay, yeah, he's not the guy.
Now, police turn their attention closer to home, to Bob Eidman's widow, Diane. It is quite routine for police to look at the spouse of someone who's been murdered.
When Bob's wife, Diane, was advised that Bob had been murdered in his office, she didn't have a great reaction.
While Diane does appear to be upset in this photo, some detectives at the scene felt she was not overly emotional.
I don't want to say it didn't seem like a surprise to her, but she wasn't reacting in a manner that I thought a wife would react when they found out their husband was shot.
That struck me, and I'm sure several detectives, as unusual.
Is she in shock? Is she in denial? Is she involved in this?
Then there's Detective Stephanie Kaiser. Already a veteran sex crimes investigator, Kaiser was respected for her sensitivity and understanding with victims.
That would be completely normal in a shock situation like that. There is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all when you're talking about trauma, because to be able to process that would take some time. They're moving slow, they can't think, so I make nothing of that behavior.
Now Detective Kaiser is about to become the St. Charles Police Department's Diane Whisperer.
Diane Eidman became my lead. Right. We were assigned to take her from, sadly, the scene.
Diane wants to go to Bob's parents' home so that she can break the terrible news to them. And during that ride, Diane talks about how she is the manager of the kitchen at the local hospital, and she also offers more information about her beloved husband.
She said that there was financial problems.
When you say financial problems, what do you mean?
I mean, they were having a tough time paying bills. According to Diane, there wasn't much cash coming in. The business itself was struggling.
Detective Kaiser continues talking with Diane, and she makes a note that Diane seems incredibly forgetful. She can't remember her own Social Security number. And then the detective asks her about any existing insurance policies.
She was upfront that, yes, I have a life insurance policy through work.
Diane initially gave us an answer that she thought they had a couple of small policies, approximately $5,000.
Not much, right?
Not much.
So Diane was pretty direct with me. I think she'd had a lot of questions asked of her and then just kind of tells me boldly, I did not do this.
These conversations with Diane will shape and reshape the police investigation into Bob Eidman's murder. At the end of that first day, Diane sounds like every other resident of St. Charles. She is terribly afraid.
It's just dawning on her, wait, I'm not safe either. I have to act to get her extra patrol, and I did. But you have to still go where the evidence leads.
And no one knows yet where that evidence will lead, especially in the wake of the very first astonishing story that Diane Eidman tells Detective Kaiser, with words that will be ringing in lots of heads at police headquarters.
One of the first things she says is, don't take this as a confession or anything, but this happened to my dad too. Has her father been murdered and her husband murdered as well? Has lightning struck this woman twice?
At the time of his death, Bob Eidman had been married to his wife Diane for more than 2 decades. And yet, even those closest to him could find Diane to be something of an enigma to them.
Not very outgoing.
No, not very outgoing. She's just kind of shy and quiet. I mean, she just didn't really have a lot to say to anyone, really.
When you would ask Bob about Diane, what kinds of things would he say about her?
You know, his famous saying was, she's not the person you think she is, and I never knew what that meant.
Now, Detective Kaiser was reeling from the incredible story that Diane had just told her.
She makes this statement, don't take this as a confession, but something like this has happened before. And I'm not quoting Diane at this point, but somebody broke into the house and shot my dad. So when I asked, did they catch the person?
How did she answer that question?
She said, they thought my mom shot my dad.
And we're wondering if lightning had struck twice in the same place.
Diane Bowling Eidman, seen here on her wedding day in 1978 with her father Jerome, was just 26 years old when he was murdered inside the home he shared with his wife Lenore, Diane's mother. The murder case that made headlines in this region all began when a call came through in the wee hours on the morning of April 6, 1984. Gordon Adams was an officer with the St. Louis County PD.
What went out over the radio when you heard the call?
As I recall, like I say, it came out as a home invasion with someone shot. And so that's what we would consider a hot call. Well, when I arrived, it's 2:30 in the morning, maybe 2:35. So it's dark as can be. I immediately went to the door, knocked on the door, and Lenore answered. And the hair is pristine, and she's standing there in a kind of sheer nightgown. And she says, my husband needs help. He's in the bedroom. He's been shot.
What are you thinking when you're hearing this story for the first time?
I mean, she didn't strike you as a woman who woke up in the middle of the night to find her husband murdered. No tears. The hair was all done. And I'm trying to get information for my report. And she actually lit up a cigarette. I'm thinking, this is your husband. He's just been murdered. She didn't have any emotion at all, almost.
David Barron was a detective with the St. Louis County Police assigned to the case.
So Lenore Bowling was asserting that an intruder had come into the house, somehow found her husband's service revolver, used that service revolver to kill him, and then left.
That's what she was saying.
How did that strike you as a plausible story, given your years of experience in law enforcement?
It was an improbable set of circumstances. And to throw into that, the garage door was open about a foot.
Okay, that garage door over there was open a foot.
And the inside garage door, leading it from the garage into the house, is the only door in the house that did not have a deadbolt.
Diane's mother had told police she believed she was being stalked in the days prior to the shooting, by a black male driving a black car who'd been leaving notes at their home. And there was a note found at the crime scene.
Well, the last note that was found at the scene said, "This is for you, pig, for what you did to me." No, I made a canvas later on in the neighborhood. No one saw a black male in a black car dressed in all black.
Lenore Bowling was charged with the murder of her husband. She pled not guilty, and while she was awaiting trial, she moved in with Bob and Diane.
How did Bob feel about living with someone who was accused of shooting her husband to death?
Bob was not happy about that.
He was scared.
Yeah,
He would
he
go
was
to
very-
bed every
he was very
night, and say would bolt his door, lock it closed. He did not. He was afraid. He didn't want to be in the house with her.
After that fateful night, this saga ending here in the fall of 1985. Diane Eidman's mother, Lenore Bowling, on trial for capital murder in the death of her husband, Diane's father, Jerome Bowling. Lenore Bowling found not guilty of her husband's murder.
They did not believe that she did it. They believed her story.
The irony not lost on investigators as Diane Eidman, more than 20 years later, now a person of interest
in a different killing.
Has her father been murdered and her husband murdered as well? What a weird set of circumstances.
But it was something else Diane Eidman told investigators about her own husband that they said gave them pause.
During Diane's initial interview, she was asked if there was any insurance policies. Diane said that she thought there was one policy, and she thought it was just a small policy, approximately $5,000.
She describes that she has a life insurance policy through work. She's not sure about the details on that.
I was contacted by an insurance company and told that there was additional policies for Robert Eidman that we were not made aware of that were quite substantial in size.
Now with Bob's death, police say she was suddenly in line to receive more than $300,000 in life insurance.
We did not know if Diane had forgotten to tell us about those policies. Did Diane know about those policies?
And as they start looking deeper into Bob Eidman, they make a mind-blowing discovery. This man was leading a double life.
And then the commander of the major case squad asked me a question that just kind of floored me. I had no idea.
I went to Bob's funeral, and it was sad to see him there. I didn't expect to go see my friend in a casket, and I felt horrible for his wife and his family.
Bob's older brother by 21 months. Glenn Eidman grew up as a straight-A student, and he was a frequent target of Bob's verbal barbs. How did he feel about you being a policeman?
He made fun of me a lot. He did not like that. Wasn't big on police. He got in trouble growing up.
Glenn always believed that Bob was his mother's favorite. Even so, he said he was not prepared for what he says she asked him to do as they attended Bob's funeral.
At his funeral, my mom, she was confined to a wheelchair. She was in very poor health. So she goes, "How could somebody do this to my boy?" I said, "Mom, I don't know. I don't know why." She goes, "Well, I want you to find those people. I want you to kill them." And I said, "That's not how this works. You know, I'm a police officer. I can't do something like that." But she was very devastated, and literally 3 months after his death, she died.
She has lost her will to live.
It was kind of a rough year, for sure.
I went up to the funeral and seen Diane as she was broken up, but I didn't ask a lot of questions.
She never really said a whole lot. She really didn't say a lot about anything. She was pretty quiet.
I was just watching Diane and just grieving with her. And I noticed there was a large police presence, and I just thought that was odd for a funeral. But if they suspect the murderers to be there, then they were there for a reason.
At the time of Robert Eidman's funeral, we set up surveillance and we recorded video of the attendees at the funeral, as well as obtaining the guest book for the services.
Police check out every name on the funeral registry. It takes them nowhere. Meanwhile, it's day 4 of the Major Crimes Task Force investigation. The clock is ticking, but still no good leads on who killed Bob Eidman.
We were striking out. There was no one that could really come up and say, Bob's having a problem with anyone.
But then the Major Case Squad does a deep dive into Bob's email, his phone and computer records. They're searching for any hidden clues. They make a discovery they're eager to know a lot more about, just as Glenn comes in for his interview.
You know, they put me in an interview room to ask me some questions. I said, you know, I have nothing to hide. You don't have to play these games. You know, ask me whatever you want. And he asked me a question that just kind of floored me. He said, we're trying to find out about your brother's alternative lifestyle. I said, what alternative? He goes, his affairs. You know, I go, you think he's out picking up women? I mean, he, you know, that just ain't happening. And he's like, your brother was gay. I had no idea.
We had no idea.
We did not know that.
Turns out this long-married insurance agent was leading a secret double life.
While we were analyzing Bob's computers and it was discovered that he was visiting male-on-male websites were sexual in nature, and he was making contact with some of these places. Sometimes in these murder investigations, as we dig into them, you find a lot about a person's life, their lifestyle.
When you have a secret, what vulnerability does that give someone like Bob Eidman?
Anytime somebody has a secret and somebody knows it, and you're keeping it a secret for a reason, people can use that as leverage to get their way if they want to blackmail you or extort you.
As investigators continue searching through Bob's phone records, they find something else noteworthy. One phone number keeps popping up, belonging to a man from out of town.
They had an intimate relationship. They would rent a hotel room somewhere and visit each other. Automatically, a flag gets raised.
What is it like to all of a sudden learn that there's this whole other secret part of his life that you knew nothing about?
It was upsetting. I guess I felt he should have been able to talk to somebody about that. He shouldn't have had to hide that life. He shouldn't have had to lie. Having a relationship and being gay that's just part of life. And I wish he would have been able to share that with us.
How you doing?
Police bring in this secret lover for questioning. They can't help but wonder, would this man have a reason to murder Bob? And what about Diane? Could his existence have set her into a murderous rage?
We've altered the man's voice.
People are going to find out some stuff they're probably not going to like.
Feelings can run wild with someone. If I can't have you, nobody's going to have you. It gives people motive.
And as a young, untested detective is taking on his very first big murder case, a totally unexpected assist from the cutting edge of forensic science, it's going to take this investigation into surprising territory and bring answers at last to the key question: why was Bob Eidman killed?
It blew my mind when the results came back. It was the golden ticket. This is what we were looking for.
Two blocks behind me, Bob Eidman was found robbed and murdered.
Diane found out on the site that her husband had been murdered.
Yes, she did.
She makes this statement, something like this has happened before. Somebody broke into the house and shot my dad.
It absolutely crossed everybody's mind that this was kind of a copycat murder.
I've told her, hey, your husband's been killed. Your marriage is about to be put under a spotlight.
We discovered that Bob was having an affair.
She had found out that he was having an affair with another man, and that she was very angry about that.
They'd had an argument about that.
Diane was asking, are you telling me my husband's gay?
This is one of those bizarre cases where all the evidence seems to be pointing in one direction, then suddenly the rug is pulled out from under you, stunning everyone.
I was very shocked.
We cut open the pocket, swabbed the edges, hoping to get possible DNA. And the next day, State gave me the name.
I was sitting in the same room with the person that shot and killed my brother.
Friends and family are mourning the loss of Bob Eidman, gunned down in his office in a small strip mall in St. Charles, Missouri.
A man that loved life, always wanted to have fun, always wanted to enjoy himself. He had a great personality, very funny, very intelligent.
He seemed like a nice guy, but after you got to know him a bit, that's when the Bobby came out. I mean, it was extremely comical. He'd make me laugh so hard. I mean, it would hurt.
He liked to have fun. He loved muscle cars. And as far as in the office, you heard him. He was a loud guy. He was one of those guys that when he got on the phone, you kind of put your earplugs in because he was pretty loud. Larger than life, he was.
I could depend on him when I was not in a great place. He would talk and he made sense.
Now Bob Eidman was dead, and nothing made sense. It was a little before 11 a.m. on June 8th when a mail carrier discovered Bob's lifeless body on the floor of his office.
No, please, no. There's a man, I'm delivering the mail right now. He's lying on the floor with blood all over him.
Bob Eidman was shot 3 times.
There was no forced entry or anything. He was a business that was open for business, but it could have absolutely been a robbery.
Robert Eidman's specialty in the insurance company was dealing with high-risk drivers, individuals that could not get insurance through traditional places.
So he would accept cash against a lot of people who didn't take cash and advised them not to take cash.
This is a huge murder case in a very small town. And with more questions than answers, St. Charles PD needs help, and boy, do they get it. Enter the elite major case squad.
20 to 30 detectives will respond, and the only thing they will work on for the next 5 days is that situation they've been called out on.
The investigation into Bob Eidman's murder is all hands on deck.
One of the things that we were not able to recover or locate was Robert Eidman's wallet.
Bob's wife Diane said he always carried his wallet in his back pocket. Police are desperate for leads, so they're going to try something unconventional. They cut the back pockets out of Eidman's pants to send for something they call touch DNA testing.
We just thought maybe a sample of skin cells could be found inside Bob's pocket.
It's a newer technology and it's a long shot. Police, meanwhile, canvassed the neighborhood where the crime occurred. They're knocking on doors, they're looking for every clue they can find.
During the area canvass, there's a Mexican grocery store. It's just a couple of doors down. I think it was on the end of this particular strip mall, and they were able to locate some surveillance video.
A white car passing by twice, but the video is grainy.
In that video footage, we saw a Ford Focus. We were not able to get a license plate due to the angle of the camera, and we were not able to see who was in the vehicle.
With lead after lead coming up empty and the clock ticking on that major case squad, Diane Eidman. She remains a subject of, well, we'll call it curiosity. She was, after all, the person closest to Bob.
It is quite routine for police to look at the spouse of someone who's been murdered.
Tough questions need to be asked about the state of the Eidmans' marriage.
I took that a step further. Has there been any time that you two argued? Has there been any time that you were unfaithful to him or he was unfaithful to you?
Diane insisted the marriage was fine. But when investigators seize Bob's computers to be analyzed, they make a shocking discovery. Bob's been visiting gay websites online. He's looking for massages and sexual relations.
Bob Eidman had been leading a secret life, and a search of phone records reveals so much more.
We found several calls that were coming in and coming out pretty much the same time each day. We discovered that Bob was having an affair.
A secret relationship with a man who lived more than 3 hours away. Police take a drive to interview him.
He was very forthcoming in the fact that the relationship between him and Bob was an intimate relationship, but very much affectionate and loving. They'd hoped to be together at some point.
It wasn't like a quick fling, kind of out the door kind of thing.
I think that's what it was going to be. But we just became good friends and just kept talking from then on.
He says he never visited Bob in St. Charles, but said the two spoke every day and that he loved Bob. The two would stay in motels closer to his hometown when they got together. During the interview with investigators, he rolled up his right sleeve to reveal a tattoo that he said was for Bob.
While doing the search of his home, we located a box the size of a shoebox, and it had cards from Bob. It had receipts from when they'd go to dinner or go to a hotel. He was saving it.
With such tender and strong feelings for Bob, a handful of scenarios leaped to the mind of law enforcement. Could it have been a jilted lover who murdered Bob Eidman?
Feelings can run wild with someone. If I can't have you, nobody's going to have you. It gives people motive.
In theory, a jilted lover made potential sense to investigators, but the man had an alibi. On the date of the murder, he was at work, hours away from St. Charles.
He was on video, and there were numerous people who said, yes, he was here this day. This is the time he clocked in.
After passing a polygraph, Bob's secret lover is cleared. But it's something he tells investigators about Diane that raises red flags.
He called me. He goes, I got some bad news. I said, what? He said, she read one of my emails. He said that Friday night, he said it was a pretty bad night.
Investigators are now zeroing in on Diane. How angry was she when she discovered Bob's secret life? Angry enough to commit murder?
You never met her before?
No. I've seen her picture.
Would she be angry enough to go in and do that?
I hope not.
Days after Bob Eidman is murdered in his office, police discover the long-married insurance agent had a secret male lover, a man whom he met up with for motel room trysts and who he spoke to every day, a man who was devoted to Bob.
Did you guys love each other, or was it just a very close personal relationship?
I loved it, but I never said it to him.
The secret lover is alibied out for Bob's killing, but in a frank session with police, he says Bob told him that Diane had discovered their relationship, and he says that Bob had told him Diane's reaction had led to a full-blown argument between the two.
He said that, she said, who's, and, so this is, I think he said this is just, a fantasy deal or what have you. It's what Bob said. She asked him if we were sleeping together, and he said no. He said it was pretty rough that night, that Friday night.
It was up to Detective Stephanie Kaiser, the Diane Whisperer, to broach the delicate subject with Bob's widow while interviewing her at the Eidmans' home. Kaiser said Diane told her that she'd learned of her husband's relationship with the man after discovering an email between the two, that Bob denied having an affair, but it was the tone of that email which had deeply hurt her feelings.
She describes it as he's telling him intimate things that he hasn't told me. She's telling me I felt hurt because he wasn't speaking to me that way. So they're married.
What do you think she meant when she said that? What kinds of things were they saying to each other?
I didn't ask the specifics, but I'm just talking to her about it. Did this happen? You know, could this be a motive?
In Detective Kaiser's account, Diane seemed to be struggling a little bit with the nature of her husband's relationship to the man, or what they did during their time together.
When I'm interviewing Diane, one of the things I asked a lot of different things, to the point where Diane was asking me questions like, are you telling me my husband's gay? I asked her, what did Bob tell you? What are your impressions? Her response back was, he told me no. He was going there to meet with him. They worked together, and he needed the stress relief.
Kaiser said Diane told her that when she learned of the relationship after discovering that email, she and Bob discussed it, but they never argued.
I'm telling Diane, Detective Stepp and Detective Grove are talking to him now. He's saying you guys had a loud, angry argument. She said, I don't know that it was loud and angry. Well, that's what he's saying. You know, Diane, what say you? She said, I told him it was over. I told him he was going to end that friendship. But she said, I don't know if I was yelling and screaming. I go, well, that's what he's saying. I'm just asking. So.
But she laid her foot down. She gave him an
Yes.
ultimatum. You are not to see this guy anymore.
Yes.
As far as you know, did Bob adhere to that ultimatum?
No, he did not.
Diane Eidman finds herself sitting in a polygraph room at the St. Charles Police Department.
So Diane was pretty direct with me. I think she'd had a lot of questions asked of her and then just kind of tells me boldly, I did not do this. I didn't. Diane is just direct.
Diane Eidman voluntarily submitted to a polygraph, and the results came back being inconclusive.
She doesn't pass, but it's inconclusive. So it's just still kind of puts her in that iffy category, if you will.
Adding to investigators' frustration, a day after Diane takes that polygraph test, the clock expires. The major case squad is out of there. 37 officers, 15 different departments had spent more than 2,500 man-hours investigating, with no arrests. A frustrating end to a furious search for answers.
When it goes back to our police department at the time, it is frustrating knowing that you didn't solve this case and it just goes on to an active case file to be looked at as further investigative leads come in.
At that point, I'm assigned the investigation.
The task of solving the murder of Bob Eidman now falls to a junior detective in the department, Don Stepp.
When my sergeant came up and asked if I would like to be assigned this investigation, I was overwhelmed. It's one of those things, am I ready to do this? You don't want to say no, it's an opportunity. I wanted to see this investigation to the end.
Don had contacted me and said, I'm starting from scratch. I'm going to take this entire investigation. I'm going to do everything over again.
What did that feel like to hear?
Well, it was refreshing to, I just felt like there wasn't a lot there.
In 2007, I had only been a detective for 4 years. I was the young guy in the squad.
I had got promoted and I was a police chief at the time, and I didn't want him to feel like there was pressure on him. But he met with me a couple times, and the one time that really struck home is he said, hey, you're like family, and I am going to solve this.
What motivates me to keep going on this investigation is there's someone or someones who had killed Bob Eidman. Bob Eidman needs someone to stand in his corner.
Detective Stepp continues to immerse himself in the details of the case. It had been over a year since Bob Eidman was murdered, when Stepp is at the airport in St. Louis and he spots Diane.
I was off duty, and then I was picking up a family member at the airport, and Diane was walking my direction.
Despite the time that had passed, Diane had never fallen off of Stepp's radar.
Diane Eidman knows that you're keeping a close eye on her, doesn't she?
Yes, sir, she does.
How would you characterize the look on her face when she saw you?
Shock. I believe at that point she thought she was going to be arrested.
But the surprise of a chance encounter pales in comparison to to the shock investigators get when they receive a call from the crime lab. Remember that pocket police cut out of Bob Eidman's pants to send for DNA analysis?
It blew my mind when the results came back. It was the golden ticket. This is what we were looking for.
It is 2009. And Diane Eidman is spotted at the airport in St. Louis by Detective Don Stepp.
How would you characterize the look on her face when she saw you?
Shock.
Stepp documents the incident, later learns that Diane took a trip to Las Vegas.
But nothing comes of it.
And if you don't have a suspect right away, then there's things that take time. So things slowed down, but things did not stop.
Face it, there are few, if any, solid leads to pursue, including the identity of that mystery driver whose car was seen on the day of the murder.
They had this famous lead about this car that went around the block, and they had it on video, but there were 22 detectives for 5 days, and they didn't find it.
And there's another lingering piece of evidence still out there. That touch DNA taken from Eidman's back pocket. It was sent to the St. Louis Major Crimes Lab.
Anytime you submitted any kind of DNA information, DNA samples, it was going to be a year or more before you got an answer to it.
Nearly 2 agonizing years after Bob's murder, it's as if this case is frozen in time.
I felt that they were never going to solve the case. I mean, we pray every day. Just, we need peace. We need answers. We need to find out what happened.
It seemed like there were no answers.
No.
Then in March of 2009, that touch DNA from Bob's pocket is forwarded to Brian Crime.
He's a forensic scientist with the St. Charles County Police Department.
We were contacted by investigators and asked if we could do the DNA on the case.
With almost every angle of the case having been explored and explored again, it all comes down to what Cry could uncover with the DNA analysis.
If we were going to swab the back pocket of a pair of pants, we would cut open the pocket, swab the edges, hoping to get possible DNA. Once I get a swab, I process it and cut the tip off and put it in an extraction tube, and then we load it onto a genetic analyzer that ultimately produces a DNA profile.
But given the cold case backlog, it takes several more months for the DNA to be processed. And when the results come back, investigators get a major break that heats up this cold case.
I developed an unknown male profile. It was a mixture of 2 people. One of those persons was the victim, Robert Eidman, and the other one was an unknown male.
I knew once we obtained the DNA profile, the identity of the individual in Bob Eidman's pocket, I knew that was the golden ticket. I knew that was when we were going to be able to close this case.
That unknown DNA could lead investigators to Bob's killer, so Cry enters the profile into CODIS.
That's a law enforcement database. Hours later, there's a hit.
It hit that same day, and the next day, State gave me the name.
The DNA doesn't match Bob's wife or his secret lover or anyone else the police had been looking into. Instead, it comes back to someone who was never on the investigators' radar.
What did you learn that person's name was?
Paul White.
When the name's first discovered, Detective Stepp is otherwise engaged.
I was on a traffic detail directing traffic.
You just want to run up and down the street and tell people we've got our guy?
I was very shocked. My mind was not on directing traffic at that time.
What did you do then?
I started researching Paul White.
Turns out Paul White was no stranger to law enforcement, having served 15 years in prison for robbery.
When they got the DNA match, Don had contacted me and said, I'm going to solve this. And I truly believed him. I got to give him a lot of credit. You know, he did a lot of old-fashioned work.
This new lead poses even more questions for investigators. Could Diane have hired Paul White to kill Bob, or had White acted alone? When the DNA came in, that didn't seem to exclude her either. The idea being maybe she had hired somebody.
Yes, I mean, it was worked all the way through.
You now have Paul White's DNA on Robert Eidman's pocket at the time of his murder, right?
Yes, sir.
So I assume you want to talk to Paul White.
Yes, sir, I do.
And Paul White was not hard to find.
Paul White was incarcerated at the time when the DNA came back.
How you doing?
And so in September 2010, Detective Stepp pays a visit to Paul White at a maximum security prison in Fulton, Missouri, where he's serving time for forgery.
Do you have any idea why we're here? I wanted him to know right off the bat that we knew he was there. Does this guy look familiar? Never seen him before. I wanted the truth. I wanted to get a confession from Paul. I've got your DNA in his back pocket.
And will that touch DNA evidence be enough to get that confession?
White leaned back in his chair. He laughed.
It's impossible.
It's not.
It's impossible. It's no way in the world. It's impossible.
What are you thinking when he does that?
I'm thinking this is going to be a long interview.
I'm getting taped and stuff, and what the, man.
More than 2 years after Bob Eidman was robbed and murdered in his own insurance office, test results on trace DNA taken from his back pocket are in, and there's a match.
That individual was in the Department of Corrections in Missouri.
What did you learn that person's name was?
Paul White.
As investigators dig deeper into Paul White's background, they uncover a possible connection to Bob. It's been hiding in plain sight.
There was numerous files on Bob's desk, and there was a file, containing Paul White's name.
Among those files is an application for auto insurance. 2 names are listed, Sherry White and her husband, Paul White. Paul White's wife's file was on Bob's desk?
Yes, sir.
What was it doing?
I think when Mr. Eidman had seen the car pull up and saw Paul White exit the vehicle, he was grabbing Sherry's file to be ready so when he came in.
Investigators quickly clear Sherry White as a suspect in Bob Eidman's murder. With the trail of evidence now leading directly to Paul White, Detective Stepp decides it's time to meet face to face.
This is where the magic happens.
Doesn't look all that magical, does it?
No, it doesn't.
What happens to people when they come into a room like this?
We get to the bottom of facts. This is where people have an opportunity to tell us about what they've done and tell us their story.
Since Paul White is already serving a prison sentence for an unrelated forgery charge, he's literally a captive audience. Let's go back and talk about some of your strategy as you were going to talk to Paul White.
Paul, I believe, was in a little bit of shock after all these years. 2 detectives showing up from St. Charles City. He did not expect that to happen that day. Do you have any idea why we're here? Okay.
Are you thinking the long game at this point, or do you think he's going to start telling you stuff that he knows at that first interview?
I'm thinking to myself, the DNA itself is probably enough to get an arrest warrant, but I didn't want just an arrest warrant. I wanted the truth. Before I ask any questions, you must understand your rights. You don't have to make a statement or answer questions. You have the right to remain silent. Do you understand that? Could you put your initials there, Paul, for me? I think initially Paul White's attitude was very kicked back, relaxed. First of all, do you know a guy named Robert Eidman? Never heard of that guy? I even put a picture down in front of him and asked him, do you know this individual? Does this guy look familiar? Never seen him before. Eventually he came back around and said, yeah, I thought that was his wife's insurance man. That picture I showed you, that's Robert Eidman. Okay, you say kind of looks familiar?
Yeah, that's the guy we got the insurance from.
And I explained that we were working A homicide investigation, and I explained that his DNA was located in his back pocket. Do you think there's any chance that your DNA is going to pop up inside that crime scene?
From a robbery.
From a robbery? None? You come to prison, they take your DNA. Your DNA pops up. You know where it pops up? Swabbing the back pocket of my victim. Your DNA shows up in this guy's back pocket.
That ain't nowhere in the world.
Why don't you think that?
You said that he got robbed. I never robbed the guy. I've been in there one time and to get insurance. So that's
exactly.
That's, ain't nowhere in the world.
You're telling me you've been in there one time.
Yeah.
And your DNA shows up in this guy's back pocket a month later?
That don't even make sense.
Exactly. With your story, it doesn't make sense.
Again and again during that first interrogation, you tell him, I've got your DNA. I mean, you must have told him, what, 10 or 15 times in the course of that conversation, right?
At least 10 or 15 times. He kept saying, there is no way, repeatedly. He did not believe it.
It's impossible. It's no way in the world. It's impossible.
Paul, it's not possible.
Okay.
Well, I'm telling you.
I know it's impossible. It's no way in the world.
Then how did it get there?
I don't even feel like it was there. It's impossible for it to be there.
After White's adamant and repeated denials about that DNA evidence against him, investigators uncover another critical piece of evidence.
I ran every kind of data history check on him. The big point with Paul White was I found out that a neighboring law enforcement agency had issued a ticket to Paul White after our homicide in a white Ford Focus.
That's right, a white Ford Focus. And remember, that's the very same vehicle make caught on a surveillance camera the day Bob Eidman was murdered.
Paul White was a passenger in that vehicle, and the driver was identified via tickets as Cleo Hines.
Why was the car stopped in the first place?
Registration on the vehicle.
The registration on the vehicle was out of date?
That's correct.
Who was the driver of the car?
The driver of the vehicle was Cleo Hines.
What was significant about that?
We later learned that Cleo Hines was living with Paul White, and his girlfriend was best friends with Paul White's wife.
So they had a long-standing relationship?
Yes, sir.
What was the indication that you had that Cleo Hines might have been involved in the murder of Robert Eidman?
It was Cleo Hines' vehicle.
You were sure of that?
I was sure of that. I had a couple other officers contact Cleo Hines, and they arrested Cleo Hines and brought him to the St. Charles City Police Department.
Does Cleo Hines know a secret that could solve Bob Eidman's murder?
You know a man died, right? You know that? Somebody pulled that trigger.
After several years of lead after lead turning cold, the investigation into Bob Eidman's murder is now heating up as lead detective Don Stepp zeroes in on a new suspect, a man named Cleo Hines.
I was going to take the same approach with Cleo Hines as I did with Paul White. Are you the hardened criminal, or are you a guy that made a mistake?
Let's talk about the robbery. Dude, I know all about it.
I told him we had a positive idea of his vehicle. We had a positive idea of a Focus, a white four-door Focus.
You know your vehicle's on video? Do you know that? You know that Mexican grocery store? There's a video camera inside. So I seen you pull in. Now, you didn't just pull around once, did you? No, like twice. You pulled around twice. Yeah. And that's on camera. Yeah. Then you pulled up.
He knew he owned a white four-door Focus. He knew he was involved in this. There was no way that he could fight that.
Unlike Paul White, Hines immediately starts talking, saying White approached him the day of the murder.
He got a gun in his hand. Okay. He wakes me up out of my sleep, into my head.
He told you he was going to do a robbery?
I basically already knew that because of the gun.
Okay.
And how he was acting. And he didn't have no money.
It took a very short time, and Cleo just started talking and talking and talking.
What kind of handgun do you think it was?
It looked kind of like a 9mm Glock.
A 9mm Glock. The same type of handgun investigators determined was used to murder Bob Eidman. But the question is, who pulled the trigger?
Somebody pulled that trigger. Yeah. Okay. It wasn't me, it was him. Okay.
And Cleo wanted to give his side of the story to defend himself against whatever Paul might say he did.
I told him 20 times to drop him. I'm outside, bro. He goes in. About 5 minutes later, he comes back out.
Do you have gloves on?
Paul. Yeah. He has a white gloves. White gloves. They were like cotton, like gloves.
Paul White had been wearing gloves, so Paul White absolutely wasn't going to say anything because he believed his DNA couldn't have been located because he was wearing gloves.
I don't even feel like it was there. It's impossible for it to be there.
So if a perpetrator was wearing a cotton glove when they go into the pocket and digging around, they could leave that DNA that's already on the exterior inside the pocket. Also, if the individual is sweating, it could actually soak through the glove and leave DNA behind that way.
What do you do with those gloves after shooting? In the barbecue pit? Yeah.
Armed with Cleo Hines' confession, Stepp hits the road to Fulton Prison once more for another crack at Paul White.
And I'm gonna tell you right up now, I got a full confession from Cleo Hines. Okay, he told me everything.
But even after Detective Stepp reveals Cleo Hines has accused Paul White of being the gunman, Paul White doesn't blink.
If you got Cleo saying that I did this and that, he's evidently lying to you. And I don't know why he would even say that I would put a gun to his head and force him to do something.
It's hard to do an interview to get a confession from somebody for a murder. It's really hard to get a confession from somebody for a murder inside prison.
White is arrested the next day, and he's charged with robbery and murder, and could be facing life in prison. Now, with the pressure turned up so high, will he finally change his story?
I've asked you 3 times. Drove 87 miles one way to ask you these questions.
Hypothetically speaking.
Hypothetically. Hypothetically.
If I say I was there, you know what I mean, and I saw everything that happened, you know what I mean, and it's like, that just makes me as guilty. You know, I still get a murder charge, but I didn't kill him. I didn't pull the trigger.
Finally, the dam breaks. Paul White starts talking.
I said, I think he got some cash in there, you know what I mean? So I said, well, you can go in and rob him, but I said, he probably know who I am, so we're gonna have to get some match. We already had those gloves, those cotton gloves that you were talking about. And then we went up to Walmart and they had those little type ski masks.
Paul White describes a chilling scene of a panicked Bob Eidman trying to comply with his assailant's demands for money with that notoriously sticky desk drawer, you know, where Bob kept his money, instead of in a safe.
And then he started shaking it, like, to his drawer and couldn't get the drawer open. And I was like, man, just give me your wallet. So I reached in his pocket and grabbed the wallet. And Cleo was like, man, no, there's more money there.
There was a lot of finger pointing at each other, trying to point the blame to someone else.
Cleo Hines told police he never even got out of the car at Bob Eidman's office. But Paul White wants police to believe that it was always Hines who had fired the bullets that killed Bob Eidman.
He shot him once. He was like, man, where the rest of the money? Where the rest of the money? And he was like, man, there is no other money. There is no other money. And he shot him again. I'm like, man, what the you doing? I said, man, is he dead? He was like, I don't know. Shot him again. So I'm like, man, we gotta get rid of this gun. You know what I'm saying? I took it and threw it off the bridge.
Paul White offers to help find the murder weapon, riding along in handcuffs